Hi, and welcome to Any Job Can Be a Climate Job. I'm Louisa Henry, and today's guest is Charlie Sellars, a sustainability leader at Microsoft and the author of the new book, What We Can Do. Charlie didn't start his career in climate. In fact, he was deep in the world of corporate consulting when a conversation with an oil executive shook his worldview. And that moment sent him on a 7-year journey to embark into sustainability and embed it into every job he had, from Gartner and to Microsoft, transforming not just his career, but also the products we use every day. So, if you're wondering how to make a difference in the world and in your job, whether or not you have permission to work on climate, Charlie's story is going to reframe what's possible for you. So let's jump in. Well, Charlie, I really appreciate you joining today. And I'd love to just start off by telling us a little bit more about your journey. So how did sustainability become a core focus for you?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I don't have a background in sustainability at all. My undergraduate degree, I got a Bachelor of Arts in physics, which for my friends who are in the sciences, they're like, "What is that? A fake degree?" No, it's a real degree. It just means that I was doing like quantum mechanics classes at the same time as modern theater and history and creative writing. So, I had a background, the kind of the traditional classic liberal arts background, but I didn't really uh, conceive of myself as having an opportunity to do anything in sustainability. I didn't see myself as a sustainability engineer. I didn't really see myself as going into an NGO. And so I kind of made my way into the private sector. And when I was there was this kind of apocryphal moment that I remember. I was at a dinner with a bunch of clients who happened to be from the oil and gas industry. We served a whole bunch of clients, and we'll talk more obviously about what that job was later. But I remember one of them just said, almost unprompted, "If you were to cut me open right now, my blood would be black because I bleed oil, and I'll always bleed oil." And that was
Wow.
kind of like, yeah, that was kind of my moment where I'm like, "What am I doing here?" Like,
Yeah, that's intense.
I feel yeah, and I was like, "Man, I gotta be doing something better, with my career." And that was that aha moment, and that was probably back in 2015 or 2016 or so, when I was like, "What if I tried making my job a sustainability job?" And that's kind of what led to a circuitous 7-year journey to where I am now at Microsoft.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I can't wait to dig into that. And before we do, and maybe you'll I'm sure you'll get into this too, but you also have a book that just went to print. It's called What We Can Do. And
That's
congratulations on
right.
that. Like writing a book is no easy feat. What motivated you to write that?
Well, I really appreciate it, Louisa. I think, I had the fortune of being really bored during COVID and not having a lot to do. And there was only like so much Halo I could play in my pajamas before I was like, I should probably do something like more productive with my time. So, I kind of started writing a couple of thoughts here or there, but it was really a combination of things that led me to really motivate me to finish it, I should say.
Okay.
So the first is, I think I'm in a really privileged position where a lot of people reach out to me for career advice on how to get into sustainability because they'd like to emulate some of the path that I've been on. And I kept hearing the same kind of themes showing up over and over again. And one of the biggest ones that I really wanted to help people on is this concept that they were not given permission to go do sustainability. They're like, I can't do sustainability in my current job or with my current set of skills. And it was kind of this realization is like, no, that's not really the case. You're just not giving yourself permission to conceive of yourself in this way. And in the worst case, some people were like, well, because I don't have this permission, why bother trying? And that's kind of what ultimately led to the framing of my book around climate optimism. The What We Can Do is kind of a collective call for action of what we can do to make a difference on climate change in our personal, professional, and political lives by like helping us feel empowered with real things that we can do. And one of the reasons that I was like really motivated to finish, in addition to those conversations, was I went to a college panel once. I just there to listen in. It was a panel at a college around like how people can get involved in fighting climate change. And they gave me three things. They're like, here are three things you can do. The first one was get really rich. Because if you're really rich, then you can buy solar panels and you can buy electric cars and, buy carbon offsets. And I was just like, okay, great
So
start.
step
Effective
one.
altruism. Let's just all get really rich. What else have we got?
Yeah.
The second thing they said is like, okay, well, you know, consider becoming a climate scientist. Go get your PhD in environmental engineering and go to Greenland and drill some ice cores out there and be like a hardcore scientist. And I love that as a career. But like I was saying earlier, like you're talking to the guy with the Bachelor of Arts in physics. I can't do that. And then I was like, okay, well, what's the third thing? I'm really ready for this third thing. And they're like, okay, the third thing is you just go work for an NGO, go work for a nonprofit, and then work on policy. And then just figure out who you need to like yell out loud enough until policy changes. And I was like, great, okay, good roles. None of these are bad things to do. But then I kind of raised my hand and I was like, well, what about the private sector? And their response was, and I quote, we don't know enough about that. We don't know much about that, so we don't know what to tell you. It was like, man, if this is how colleges are teaching their kids how to have sustainability careers and they're just ignoring 99% of the jobs out there, oh, that got me rankled. I like probably wrote 10 pages that night just being like, we got to fix the whole American education system.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, that is quite a story. And very disappointing. I hope a lot of college people are listening to this and gonna hear an alternate path that ventures away from these three options that they laid out.
Sure. I mean, like, to be fair, like, they can get rich while also doing all the other stuff too. Like, they can still have that as a goal if they really want it.
Very, very
Yeah,
true. Very true. Very true. Uh-huh. And okay, so let's talk a little bit more about your background. This conversation with the oil executives who would bleed oil, and where were you at when this happened? And start us from there.
yeah. So I think I was a little directionless out of college, and I kind of followed the masses. And at least where I went to undergraduate, got my undergraduate degree, a lot of people were pulled into kind of the consulting world. And so I was a little sheep and followed everybody else because that's what everyone was told to do. And I ended up at a company called Gartner. And so Gartner is an S&P 500 company. They focus a lot about doing kind of research and advisory services for executives around the world, mostly for IT, but also for things like supply chain, HR, marketing, etc. So I started out as an analyst for the IT side of the house. I was writing these big old reports for chief information officers for these big companies. And I didn't initially do anything on sustainability there. I was writing pretty neutral things about like, here's, the future of the digital economy. Cool. But I kept in the middle of all this remembering my passion for sustainability and kind of nudging along the edges just to kind of get a sense of where the business was at. I was like, hey, can we write one of these on sustainability? No, we can't. Why not? Our customers don't care about it. Are you sure? You just went to that dinner with the oil guy. Do you think he cares about it? Kind of this back and forth over a while. But I had kind of been active enough about it that I got to this point 4 years into my career where I said, hey, you know what? Actually, after this apocryphal oil and gas dinner, I kind of need to make this more of my thing. So if I can't find a way to do this here, I'm going to go leave. Now, to their credit, they're like, hey, maybe, Charlie, you're just with the wrong set of clients. Let's put you to a new set of clients and you can see if they care about sustainability. So they passed me over to the people who ran the supply chains of a lot of the world's largest companies. And there were some pockets of interest there. There was a person who was writing some sustainability research. There was an element of it, but it was still kind of very much in pockets. And then I kind of asked the question of like, well, I should back up. At that point, I was transitioned from being an analyst to being effectively an events manager, a glorified events manager, where I was in charge of like the agenda for what they'd all come and talk about.
Okay, so people are coming into like a Gartner event, and you're arranging, you're coordinating the event, making sure it all goes smoothly.
Yeah, exactly. And determining like, what are we going to talk about? What's on the agenda? And so the only thing that I was told by my boss was like, hey, figure out what these people should talk about. And that's when I had that moment of like, well, can I just give myself permission to make them talk about sustainability? And I did. And every single event I ever put on, I always made sure that sustainability was a part of the agenda. And I always made sure it was one of our clients who was really passionate about that topic, delivering that content to the rest of them. And so I kind of pulled that for several years. Yeah.
Okay, so I love what you're saying here. You gave yourself permission. Is that really the case, or did you go and you pitched it internally, got some buy-in, and like did how did like can you dig in a little bit more?
Yeah, no, totally. So I think, there was already a little bit of an appetite with that group of clients and that group on the supply chain side. So, of course, I didn't just go rogue. If I had gone rogue, I think I probably would have been a little bit in trouble.
Okay,
But I just cleared it with my boss, being like, hey, I really think this topic could be really powerful for the audience based on what I just heard from client X. And
right.
then he's
Okay.
like, okay, yeah, based on what client X said, they want to talk about the circular economy. I think that's a great idea. Let's lean into that. And
Mm-hmm.
then you kind of get that flywheel going where they go to one meeting and it's on me to make sure that that is the best meeting that's ever happened at the company. Because once you have that, then the company's like, wait a second, Charlie just had the best event ever at this company. I don't know if it actually was, but he had a good one. And people said that this was a topic they enjoyed and want to do more of. Well, yeah, Charlie, keep doing more of this. Then you're giving us value. You're connecting us into something that the clients really want that we've never delivered them before in a material way.
Yeah.
And that was that wedge that I kept driving to grow and grow and grow the focus.
So what I'm hearing is you took what was really important to you and your background and your values, which is sustainability. You listened for customers who were also interested about the same thing, and then you used that as an opportunity to shape the work that you were doing, which was the events and the agenda for these supply chain executives.
Spot on. And I think that was the unique way that it was successful for me is I led with that customer lens. I didn't lead with the like, hey, we should do sustainability because Charlie wants to do sustainability.
Yeah,
I led with the, hey, no, we are missing a huge opportunity to make a lot of money by leaning into this area where our clients are demanding more of our focus and our content. And it
interesting.
was only it was like building from that business case that then started to open up doors beyond just the supply chain practice. Like I remember, and by the way, this is part of the fun is like and we'll talk, I think, probably more about this notion of sustainability as your personal brand. But as I was building my brand for sustainability within the supply chain part of the company, I started just absolutely reaching out to anyone and everyone in the other parts of the business. And I was probably super obnoxious about it, but I remember reaching out to the head of communications for the company, reporting like right up into the CEO. And I was just like, hey, we got this great sustainability story over here. We're getting CEOs of companies engaging us on this topic. Like, let's just do a video for the whole company. Let's play it at the company town hall. Let's put it on YouTube. What do you think? And to his credit, he's like, yeah, I mean, customers care about it, employees care about it, and no one else is doing it other than you. So yeah, tell us what you want to film.
Yeah, and this was not, like, assigned to you, it wasn't part of your OKRs for the year or, like, your goals and objectives. You found an opportunity and you jumped on it.
It was fun to do it because I think what's so cool about sustainability as a career path in so many of these companies is that it doesn't really exist. Like, in some industries, you'll spend 2 years as a junior analyst and then 2 years as an analyst and then 2 years as a principal analyst. And you kind of have that ladder that is a very kind of clear pathway forward. But a lot of times building sustainability as a kind of a core business priority for regular old companies, you kind of get to define it yourself. And so the last job I applied for that I didn't have some hand in shaping was the first job I took out of college. Because after that, it's leaning in and having these conversations. And then somebody says, you know what, Charlie? I love this idea. Let's expand the role. Let's expand the focus and then build it, build it, and build it from there, which was really fun to be a part of that journey.
Do you ever think back and wonder, like, what if you had done this when you were working with the oil and gas execs? Do you think there might have been an opportunity to shape a different future there?
I think it probably could have, because if you look to where Gartner is now, at the time I was told, no, people in IT don't care about sustainability. Look where we are now, 10 years later. IT sustainability, AI sustainability is like the number one topic in sustainability in so many places. And it's the people those very same clients that were telling me that they weren't interested before. absolutely a huge part of their focus area now because of all these questions of how you can enable cloud computing to happen in a more sustainable.
So these were oil and gas IT departments that you were working with? Is that right?
It was all kinds of IT departments. I
Okay.
just always, for some reason, got sat at the oil and gas table. It was not my choice. That
Okay,
just
yeah.
kept sitting me there.
Okay, okay. All right, so you're painting a very rosy picture here of, you found an opportunity, you socialized it, you got it on the agenda, you made a great event, got the comms team to put a video out there, which is on YouTube, and we can include that in the show notes if people want to see it.
Yeah.
And so, what about challenges? You must have run across some challenges or hiccups.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the challenges definitely were there at the beginning. Of course, I did make a couple of pitches like, I think we should make a product for chief sustainability officers. No, that's dumb. And
Mm,
I think we should try to bring sustainability to this group of clients. And they're like, why are you bothering us? I think you have to kind of get used to hearing no a lot as you try to figure out what the specific niche that really brings value to the business is.
yeah.
Because admittedly, when I was starting, a lot of the place where I got the most pushback is the place where I was kind of leading from, I think it'd be cool if this were to happen, rather than is our customer base secretly asking for this and nobody's been able to serve it for them.
So that feels like the real unlock is like really focusing it around the customer.
It really certainly helps. Or some other driver like, hey, if we do this, we'll reduce our costs. Or hey, if we'll do this, we will retain our employees better. But yeah, certainly it was that customer voice that helped us to drive that growth of focus within the supply chain practice.
Yeah. Okay. And do you feel like there was anything that happened there that had a particularly lasting impact that you're proud of?
Yeah, I mean, it's very humbling to be a part of these things, Louisa. I think one of the I'll give two examples, one kind of broader, one more personal. On a fun example, so Gartner, for those that don't know, and maybe this is a good time to define, like, what is the thing that people actually go to Gartner for?
Yeah,
They'll
sure.
go there oftentimes to kind of figure out what the big trends are, especially in the technology industry. But they'll also go there to figure out, like, who are the best companies to buy from? Who are the best companies out there? And one of the things that Gartner does to help that decision making is they offer a lot of awards. And in
Mm,
some of these awards, I was like, I mean, I was kind of saying, like, hey, can we just really make sustainability a part of the rubric that we reward our clients on and reward customers on? And once it gets in that rubric, then you start to see businesses orient themselves being like, oh, shoot, if I want to be number one in this ranking, I have to have a sustainability story. And then it's the head of seat of IT calling their, I don't know, their sustainability person being like, are we doing anything? Can you help me out in this narrative? And it starts to build this fun flywheel of forcing the client base to care for it if they want to show up well on this award system, which is really fun.
yeah, that's
I'd
interesting.
like to think some people change their behavior for that reason.
Yeah, it
Um,
at least introduces it to the conversation, right? It might not be something that they were considering before, but maybe this at least got them talking about it, and then, yeah, maybe they did make changes.
yeah, and I think the other one, and this is very selfishly a real lasting impact, is I remember putting on an event. This was down in Miami in like 2018. It was a bit of a nightmare event. Like the hotel had sold us rooms that didn't exist. We got there the day of, and we're like, "Where are these rooms?" They're like, "Oh, we didn't finish building them yet." And so there's all this chaos going on. We're trying to figure out where to put everybody.
Yeah.
I tore like the sheath of my Achilles during all this. I'm like hobbling around on one foot the whole time. But despite that, we had a person come and do a talk on the circular economy, which is really about how you can kind of reduce, reuse, recycle, and you know try to avoid that direct to landfill journey. And as he was talking, a person who ended up being my future boss was in the audience, and she kind of had this moment of like, "Oh God, if he's doing this, what am I doing?" Because they were kind of a little bit, I think, rivals at the time.
Yeah.
And so we were out. I was out to drinks with my clients, and she was one of them there. And then at one point, we're talking, and then she's like, "Why don't you come work for me?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, after attending your event, I kind of realized we need to build a sustainability team to focus on the stuff that you guys are talking about at these events. And do you want to be the guy to do it?" And that was actually my first ever offer to go and really do sustainability as a full-time job.
Yeah.
But that I don't know if that role would have been created if not for the focus from the work at Gartner.
And that role is at Microsoft?
That's right. So that was to build out the sustainability office for the devices part of Microsoft, which I led that team for 3 years before switching into my current cloud-focused role. And that's where I got to build fun little products like the Ocean Plastic Mouse, which is made out of literally plastic that was dredged out of like the Pacific Ocean. There's a Xbox controller that we made that's made out of like old Xboxes. And that was a lot of what I was brought in to kind of build this program of how to actually make our consumer hardware sustainable.
Oh, that's cool. And what are you most proud of in those projects?
Oh, yeah, there's a lot. So, one of the things that I think I'll give you two things. One is the computer that I'm working on right now was one that like I really got to work from kind of all the way from industrial design to the supply chain, to the kind of the product engineering to the Windows operating system on how it runs on it. And we were able to drop the emissions of our newest PCs by like I think it's around 40% is the final number,
Wow.
which is great. It's like all these recycled materials in it. It's more energy efficient. It was really fun to be a part of that. I'm very proud of that. And then on the Xbox side, I had a peer who I worked very closely with because we have like a head of games sustainability, if you can believe it, at Microsoft, and they focus a lot on like how do you make games more sustainable. And then I focused on like kind of the back end, the supply chain of the hardware, like the Xbox consoles itself. And I think since we've initiated that program on that end, there's about 1 million tons of emissions we've been able to reduce from things as simple as helping the Xbox turn off when you're not using it. As simple as, the games that we work with, like Fortnite, reducing the intensity of the pause menu because that's a time when people aren't playing their games. And even
Oh,
just those little changes in Fortnite, you should definitely, the reader should look it up. We were able to take 14 wind turbines of power off of the grid by just basically fiddling with like the pause menu fidelity and the frames per second. It's crazy the amount of cool stuff you can do at these big companies.
I'm gonna have to tell my kids. They're gonna be so excited.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay, so you've been doing amazing stuff at Microsoft, but so I want to talk a little bit more about that sustainability as a personal brand that you were talking about before.
Yeah, and this is a really, I think, valuable one is I think the brand that we build can be uncomfortable for some people sometimes because
Mm.
they don't want to boast, they want to brag, they don't want to kind of make too much of a fuss. But I
You mean
think
their
what's
personal
unique
brand or
about
the company they're working at? What do you mean by that?
Oh, sorry, personal brand.
Okay.
So, like, you, Louisa, like, let's say that this podcast becomes the number one podcast listened to in the world. Like, I don't know, would you want to go and just every person you meet being like, hey, I'm Louisa, the number one podcaster in the
Absolutely
world?
not. That is not how I will go about it.
No, totally. And it's kind of uncomfortable. But I think what I found is, especially for sustainability, um, there's some value in building that brand for yourself because oftentimes is just the knowledge of to reach out to you can only really happen if people know you exist. So especially like for Gartner, like I said, there was definitely some good work happening in pockets, but not anyone who's really trying to pull it all together in a big way. And by virtue of kind of becoming the guy that was working on sustainability, really leading with it, really making it a part of the way that I showed up, it became easier for either people to reach out to me being like, hey, I would love to try out this idea. I hear you're the guy working on this kind of stuff. Can we collaborate? Or at least helping you open doors more easily, like reaching out to the CEO's communications team. They're like, oh, yeah, I heard about some of the work that you're doing. You seem to be the sustainability guy. But here's the catch, Louisa. I didn't have sustainability in my title at all. I wasn't a
Right. How did you
sustainability
do that
guy
then?
technically. Fill the white space. I gave, you got to give yourself that permission sometimes. I think there's this fear that if nobody's working on it, there's a reason for it, and it's like, oh, well, if no one's working on it, or maybe someone else is working on it, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to get things messy. Sometimes it's simpler, which is no one's working on it because no one's thought to work on it. Um, and that's kind of if you become somebody who can start to realize sustainability, maybe not for the whole company, maybe even for your little area,
Yeah.
that's really helpful to build that brand awareness for yourself as somebody who's like able to get it done and provide value in a place where nobody fought to actually kind of go and try to do something.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So the advice you'd give listeners who want to make an impact, but don't have sustainability in their job title, filling the white space, helping their team, their company. What else? What comes to mind?
Well, I think another one is just why not you? I just it's always good to carry that with us. Like, why can't it be me? Why couldn't it
Yeah.
be me? And I think that's going back to your first question, why did I write the book that I wrote? Is I talked to so many people that had already decided for themselves that it wasn't them. Um, but and it was this parade of people being like, well, I think I have to go get this certification to go work on sustainability, or I think I have to go back to school and get a master's degree to work on sustainability.
Did
And
you
I
do
think
that?
the reality is, no, I did not. I did not, and it's definitely valuable for some people, but for others, they already have the skill set that they need. Like a great example of this is I talked to a software developer the other day, and she is like, "Hey, I really want to, Charlie, help me out. I'd love to know how I can do sustainability in my current job." And I was like, are you in charge of product X?" And she's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Can you make product X more sustainable or more efficient by the way that you code it?" She's like, "Yeah." It's like, "Can you introduce product features to customers that let them make more sustainable choices?" And she's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "So why do you think you don't have a sustainability job?" She's like, "You know what? That's a good point."
Wow. I love it. That's great. Yeah, what great advice. And so you structured your book around personal, professional, and political action. What do you think is one takeaway for each of those?
Yeah, it's so the reason I structured it in that way is because there's really, I think, not a lot of resources out there that really take a person-centric view of where we exist in every phase of our life. There's a lot of resources for what we can do basically in our house, a lot of maybe resources of how we should vote, but not a lot that really pull it all together. So that's why I decided to take that framing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of themes that are across, and like in the personal emissions side, and I define personal as like what we do at home, the trips we take, commuting to work, the purchases we make. Uh, I want to give people a lot of grace. Like it is impossible to make the most sustainable decision every single time, and that shouldn't be the expectation on ourselves or the people that we kind of live with and hang out with. However, though, there is this really fun mnemonic that we've all learned as kids, which is reduce, reuse, recycle. And the reason I want to bring that up is now there's actually a really good amount of climate science to like suggest that was actually the best possible guidance we could have come up with, because to the emissions to make something are oftentimes way more than the actual emissions of using the thing itself. And so, like the computer that I'm on, and most computers that you operate on, typically the amount of emissions it takes to make the computer can be up to 10 years of actually using the computer. It's crazy. And so
Wow.
that reduce part of reduce, reuse, recycle really helps us in this conception of like, okay, well, if every device or everything I buy has emissions associated with making it, moving it, using it, and then losing it at the end of life, does that factor into how I make the decisions I make of like what to buy and when, what to reuse and when, rather than just defaulting to, oh, I'll just try to recycle whatever I buy.
Right, right. That makes sense. I'm thinking about the piece you were saying about like how people tend to put a lot of pressure on themselves as far as evaluating. A lot of people I talk to that really care passionately about this space have a lot of anxiety around purchasing decisions and just consumption decisions in general. And that's also one of the reasons why I love what you said about giving yourself some grace. We live in a society where we're going to need to consume things and we're going to need to buy things, but we can do it in a more thoughtful way. And thinking about that whole life cycle is really good. I hear people talking about that too when it comes to like, should I trade in my car for an EV car when my car is running just fine? And how do you make those types of trade-off decisions?
So that's actually a funny that you mentioned that example, because I talk about this as one of the little case study in my book.
Oh, okay.
And I'm the weird sustainability guy that's telling you to keep your gas car. because the amount of emissions to make your EV is about the same as driving your gas vehicle for about 3 years. So when there's a chance to upgrade to an EV or a hybrid, or maybe you don't even need a car at all, like definitely take that opportunity. But to your point, like sometimes just, getting rid of a perfectly usable thing you already have for a more sustainable version is actually counterintuitively the worst thing you could do in that
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking about the college what graduation speech you were hearing. Was it a graduation
Or the
speech?
panel.
The panel,
It
the
was a
panel.
panel. Yeah.
Yeah, and not talking about private companies at all, right? And all of the examples you gave in our conversation here are really focused around private companies making a difference, and like we're going to keep consuming from private companies, and if private companies are changing the way they produce things, the way they make products more efficient or their services, then we're all going to end up in a better place without like a drastic change in society or how we live our lives, which is not going to happen.
Which, who knows if society will change in that way? But I think the vantage point that I really take, Louisa, is like companies are made up of people. And each of those people is making decisions at their work every day that could be sustainability decisions, but they might not have given themselves permission to do it yet. And that's part of the hope of not just the book I read, but also just my personal experience from my time at this advisory company, Gartner. Is it's almost like on the professional side, there's like three different circles of impact. So, or I guess maybe the better way to say is three different like levels of jobs available that let you do sustainability. So the smallest one is the jobs that legitimately have like sustainability in the title. There are not a lot of those, and they are super competitive. As you can imagine, because everyone who wants to make an impact thinks that that's the job that they have to go get.
Right.
But those aren't necessarily the ones that are actually like really making the most impact, if you will, because then you get to the next level of jobs, which are like any job you could do at a mission forward company. Like if you're working at a solar panel installer, you don't have to be the person installing solar panels to like get credit for the impact. You can be the accountant for the team. You can be, I don't know, you can be the office manager, but you're still part of enabling an engine that is doing good in the world.
Right.
But then that biggest set of jobs is any job. And that's the spirit of your podcast. It's like any job, anybody doing anything has that opportunity to start turning that dial, that personal dial of focus towards a more sustainable way to do that job. And I'll tell you, as somebody with a sustainability title, the people actually doing the sustainability work, like changing the products, buying the green materials, etc., they are the regular people in the job. The regular people with like an engineering background or a marketing background or what have you, that have now been given permission to go work on sustainability. And if without those people, like I got to tell you, Louisa, like it is way easier to teach an engineer how to do sustainable engineering than it
Yeah.
is to teach some schmuck like me how to become an engineer or how to become a product designer. It would be a disaster if you were to try to ask me to do that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Can you share a little bit because I imagine a lot of our listeners are craving a sustainability title or sustainability job, and I know a lot of people I talk to feel like that's what it means to like get a job in climate. Can you give us a little insight on like what that job's really like? You said a little bit about teaching engineers. Can you shed a little bit more light on that?
Yeah, no, totally. So, my current role is I lead sustainability for Microsoft's cloud operations group. And so much of what my job entails is looking at the company's overall corporate commitments to become carbon negative and water positive and zero waste by 2030, and then translating that into like a strategy for how to achieve it from the cloud part of the business. So, in many regards, think of me as kind of the hub of many spokes, where I can't be the guy and I and my team can't be the people who are all going and like making every single thing happen. But we're the ones making sure that we are orchestrating across the whole of the group to that we're doing the right things, that the right people have the right budgets and are empowered in the right way to see how their work fits into that bigger picture. So maybe one day I am going to the engineering team and saying like, hey, this is what we need to see from the embodied carbon of the materials used to build our data centers. And then maybe next day I'm going to our investment team and saying, hey, it would be really valuable to invest in these kind of companies that can give us the supply to go and do that thing. And then maybe another day, I'm talking with our clean energy procurement team. So it's really kind of, you know, there are hundreds, if not thousands of people each doing sustainability at Microsoft. And
Yeah.
mine is just one type of role. But, oh my God, it's such a fun space to be in. I don't know if I fully answered the question,
No,
Louisa,
no,
but it's a fun
yeah, it
time.
sounds like you're kind of guiding people, showing them like what the path is to get to the overall company sustainability goals, and then really empowering them to go and make the decisions they need to make, and just trying to connect dots where it makes sense. Does that sound right?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's me being in a sustainability central office. But if you're like a clean energy procurement person, then your whole job day in day out is like, I'm going to go and figure out how to sign a contract to buy this much clean energy in this jurisdiction. Completely
Right.
different skill set that I would not be very good at myself. But that's okay because my job is to make sure that they fit into the bigger picture with the engineers and the marketers, et cetera.
So, what do you think is one small step somebody listening today could take to embed sustainability into their work?
Yeah, I think a very small and quick step is to kind of look around and ask who's working on this. And if no one's working on this, make it you. And what does working on it mean? Maybe that's the next kind of small step. I'll quote a friend of mine named Drew Wilkinson. He's got a case study in my book, and he says something that I really kind of think is a funny but true statement, which is waste is the gateway drug to doing sustainability at a big company. Um, because it's the most visible, it's the most visceral, I should say, to a lot of
Yeah.
people. And so, like, if there are just, if you're, in food service and you are seeing that a lot of food is being thrown away at the end of your shift, like, can you be that person to say, hey, wait a second, we could do something else with this food because we're wasting money on this. It's obviously not good for sustainability. And there are so many other examples of just, people listening hopefully can think of something immediately of like, oh yeah, we waste a ton of X. Can we do less of it?
That's a great point, and you're reminding me of the first podcast I did with Fuki Sushi, and they talked a lot
Yeah,
about wasting food waste, and how to avoid that. And it's interesting to think about waste in general across industries, because you're right, like that's just excess. That's really ripe for getting rid of and cutting, and it's going to save the company money, likely,
right.
which is always a good thing when you're trying to launch something new at a company, is like tying it to cost savings or revenue gain.
Totally.
All right, so Charlie, where can listeners find your book and follow your work and reach out?
Yeah, so hopefully when you're listening to this, the book is already out. You'll be able to find it at www.charliesellers.com, just my name. Very original, I know. And I'm that weird millennial, Louisa, that has no social media whatsoever other than LinkedIn. So
Okay,
find me on LinkedIn, I suppose.
great, amazing. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
No, just, it's always fun to talk about this topic, Louise. I love what you're trying to do with the podcast. Hopefully the listeners found at least a couple of nuggets of insight in there. But I really want to kind of underscore it to close it out is, um, the who is you and the when is now. You just have to give yourself permission for that statement to be true. You'd be surprised at what you can accomplish if you start to realize that you can be that person to go and make that change.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Charlie. This has been a pleasure, and we'll talk to you
Totally.
soon. All right. So that's Charlie, showing us that the path to climate impact doesn't require a new title. Just a little bit of courage, a lot of bold ideas, and some trial and error. Personally, I really love being able to tell my 12-year-old how to make Fortnite screens more sustainable. I think I got some big mom points for that one. Charlie is proof that small moves inside a big company can lead to big results. You can find his book at charliesellers.com and find him on LinkedIn. And if this episode made you think differently about your job, please consider sharing it with a friend. Give it a like, hit subscribe. It really helps get the word out. Really do appreciate it. And until next time, I'm Louisa, and this is Any Job Can Be a Climate Job.